All right, so welcome back to another episode of Pables and Jables, whereas non-critics completely criticize our favorite movies and TV shows. I'm JB,
I'm Brian.
and today we'll be covering the Amazon Prime animated series Invincible. So Brian, what is your quick, non-spoilerly thought of this show?
Okay. Invincible was a fantastic show. Thank you for the recommendation, JB. So Invincible, just a quick synopsis. It's about essentially a kid who discovers that he has superpowers and he is part of like this family. And his dad is the strongest superhero, like the Superman equivalent. But the show is much more than just being about superpowered people, but it's about these superheroes that deal with very real world problems. So I love that the show was able to ground these superheroes in ways that made them feel like actual people, dealing with their choices and the impacts of their choices and their relationships and these interpersonal relationships that they have with the people around them. And just being able to relate to these heroes and seeing that the show was centered around something just much more relatable, I thought really made it very effective. What about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a really good point you made. My recommendation would just be watch the show. If you haven't seen the show, watch the show. You'll probably like it. If you like action, blood, and just a good story and good characters, like you said, watch the show. I think it's a great show. I think it's definitely not, I think a lot of people see animated and automatically think, oh, it's for kids. Definitely not for kids. Don't let your kids watch the show.
Absolutely not.
Definitely not. But yeah, I think, it's a great show. I would recommend it to anyone. So let's hop in.
So then, yeah. So I guess before we start, quick spoiler warning. So we're going to be diving right into it. So if you haven't seen the show, we recommend that you go back, watch the show, and then come back to this video after you've seen it. But JB, what did you think spoiler wise? Let's get right into it. What did you think?
Where do I start? Dude, that all right. I don't want to jump to the end. So let's I will say, so before I watched the last episode, I don't think they had signed on for more seasons yet. So when I watched the last episode, I was expecting more to be resolved than it was.
Yeah.
That being said, then I found out like the next day or so that they signed on for 2 more seasons, which I was really excited to hear.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like they're, they left it in a place where you're wanting more. You don't really know why, in the end, Omni Man just leaves, right? And you kind of don't exactly know where he's going or like what's going to happen. So, my first thoughts of last episode was a little disappointed, but then when I kind of thought back on it, I was like, no, that episode was amazing. A lot of good stuff. So yeah, I think, there's so much to say about it. Overall, it's unlike any show I've ever watched. I haven't watched too much, animated content. But from what I have watched, this is totally different. This is, I've never watched an animated show with like gore like this and blood and just like the overall tone, the serious tone that the entire show had. But I also liked that, it had like funny moments as well. Like they threw a lot of like funny quips in there. There were a lot of good characters and some funny characters, like the alien, the Cyclops alien, who was voiced by Seth Rogen. I thought was really funny. I thought that was cool, and I like how he showed up at the end as well. Overall, dude, it was not. I didn't know what to expect because I didn't know much about the comics or anything. What got me onto the show was my buddy sent me a tweet of the end of the last 2 minutes of the first episode. He's like, yo, have you ever heard of this? And I was like, no. And I checked it out and I watched it on Twitter, literally the last part of the first episode where Omni Man just killed. Yeah. So it kind of ruined the first episode for me. I knew that was coming, but that being said, that turned me on to the show. I was like, I need to watch the show. This looks insane. Absolutely. And that's, and the rest is history. Yeah. What about you? What do you want to jump into first here?
Well, first, the cast was amazing.
Yes.
I've never seen such an ensemble of A-star, like rock stars just coming together for an animated series. So, it's got Steven Yeun, J.K. Simmons. It even has Mahershala Ali, as the Titan guy. And then Jason Mantzoukas, the guy in the league, as Rex.
Yeah.
Uh, all these A plus actors just coming together for the show.
So
I thought, yeah,
I want to jump in. So Steven Yeun is from The Walking Dead.
yes,
He's Glenn, right? That's the character's name.
yeah,
In case people don't know, obviously
yeah.
people know J.K. Simmons, Seth Rogen, uh, Zach Quinto. I recognize that name, but I
It-
forget.
he's Spock,
That's okay. That makes a lot of sense now. And he's robot. Okay.
and
Okay.
then Mark Hamill, isn't it? He's the
Yep.
tailor.
Yep. I didn't
Which
know that until you told me that.
But yeah, and then Seth Rogen. When I heard the name, I was like, why do I recognize? Or when I heard Alan the alien talking, I was like, I know that voice,
Yeah.
but I couldn't put a face to it. And then I looked it up, and I couldn't believe it.
We're missing some too. I mean, Zazie Beats
Zazie Beats, right?
was Amber.
Yeah. Sandra
And
Oh was Debbie.
Yep. I recognize her from Grey's Anatomy. that's where I recognize her from. Yeah, there are a lot of big names in this.
Yeah,
A lot of big names.
yeah. But Steven Yeun, I'm watching, being a big Walking Dead fan myself, to see him take on all these roles. He just had a huge breakout role with Minari, I feel like, and now he's starring in this awesome series here. So I feel like he's a real rising star recently.
Mhm.
And then, so talking about that first episode, absolute craziness. So I didn't know what the heck was going on. I was literally just going off of your recommendation, off of one trailer. So I knew it was going to be bloody. But when the show started, it starts in a pretty generic superhero way. It gets us to care about the security guard who's talking about his like dysfunctional family and his offstanding son. And then you're watching it, and the violence is very subdued. I think there's like somebody cuts his forehead and there's a little bit of blood. And I wasn't really sure where the show was going. And then the final like 2 minutes happens, and the violence just smacks you in the freaking face, man. Absolute wild. But a few things to note was that I feel like the violence is, it's very over the top and it's very extreme, but it never felt gratuitous, and it never felt meaningless, right? So even in that first episode, right, it was important to show, just in order to paint Omni Man in a certain light, right? And what I thought was really interesting, what I really liked about that first episode, was that wasn't an easy fight for Omni Man. He almost dies, right? And then even Debbie says that she's never seen him that hurt before, and she like becomes really worried about him for like the first time since his entire superhero career, right? And I really like that. And then you watch that fight, and you realize that Omni Man didn't say a word, and he completely ambushes them. And taken by complete surprise, they were able to put up a really good fight. So it makes you wonder, if they were going in prepared, he probably would have lost.
Mm.
That's something Omni Man knew, So I really liked, and that right away puts the Guardians of the Globe, in a certain tier. The people that took over for them, like Rex and Monster Girl and like this crew, they wouldn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
They wouldn't stand
Yeah.
a chance.
And we saw that. I forget what episode it was, but we'll get to it. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So, and then, but the part, that without really going into it too much, where I really felt like the violence was important to the show and like a core piece of of how it's trying to tell its story, is in that final episode, right? And we'll definitely get into it a little bit more when we start talking about that last episode. But that last episode just wouldn't be the same without violence as part of its components.
Yeah, I think to comment on that, I agree to an extent. I definitely think the gore is a little over the top, but from my understanding, it follows the comics. Apparently, the comics are super gory and bloody. So,
right.
I mean, I can't. They're going to follow the comics as much as they can with that.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you in the sense that, you know, it kind of like it shows what Omni Man is capable of, and kind of his disdain for like other life, right? I mean, when he, like in that first episode when he kills the Guardians of the Globe, like he doesn't just kill them, he destroys them like
Right.
brutally.
Yeah, the Flash equivalent, what is it? Red Rush, the way
Yeah.
he squeezes his brains. And then, you know, if people have ever wondered what a Batman versus Superman fight would look like if
Yep.
Superman gave absolute no craps, that's what it would look like.
That's
He
what
took
yeah.
the dude's leg and just splattered him all over the floor. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, let's talk about the Guardians of the Globe were basically just the Justice League, right? Like you had basically a Batman, you had that fast dude who's the Flash,
Woman,
Wonder Woman,
Hunter.
yep, Immortal was basically their Superman.
Yeah.
And and then Aquaman was actually like a fish. Like an actual fish. Yeah, that was interesting. I'm curious how that came up. Well, is this, so I don't know, is Invincible DC? Do you know? Or is it like an independent?
No, it's independent. Totally.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious how that played out. Like, hey, let's just rip, you know, Justice League's format. But
yeah,
they all died in the first episode, so I mean, they weren't really, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. The way that Wonder Woman died, and the way that she like he like broke his neck, and then she like coughed, and I was like, and I was watching with my girlfriend, and my girlfriend was like, "Whoa, this is too much," and I was like, I did not know the show was like this.
I am sorry, but I'm not sorry at the same time.
But at the same time, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
No, thank you for showing us this. Right.
Yeah.
So like, and then by the second and third episode, she was totally hooked.
Yeah.
Something else that I do want to mention is just is that how flawed the characters were. So, you know, like Robot and his like weird like infatuation with Monster Girl, that like it's kind of pedophilia, but it's not, because she's like 29. And I thought, you know, that was a really complex situation. You know, it's literally every single character that we're seeing is like going through some kind of turmoil. You know, you had Black Samson with like his loss of powers, and is like him coming to cope with like his lack of powers, you know, in that fight with that giant I forget what his name was, but the big lion. And you know, the guy, you could tell like the guy was like, you know, even without powers, he can be absolutely heroic. So I'm really excited to see where Black Samson goes with the recovery of his powers. It looks like they're electric based, I think, right?
Yeah, it looked like it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then, you know, Omni Man is just a fascinating character. Even during that fight, he's flying above, just watching his son get killed, and he's not doing a thing about it, right? So even
Brutal.
Yeah, so I thought the characters themselves were really fascinating. The one I really hated, I got to tell you, was Amber. She was absolutely the worst. Like, how did you feel about her, first off?
I don't know if I had a too strong of an opinion on her. I mean, their whole, you know, relationship thing was it was basically just Spider-Man, right? It was Peter Parker and Mary Jane. So I thought that was, you know, I mean, it was kind of a generic, like, you know, I'm a superhero, can't tell you, and I'm not, you know, showing up for all these events and you're wondering why, and then break up with me. But in the end, she knew. Yeah. So I was a little confused why she was so mad. I mean,
what is she mad about? He's saving lives.
But, you know, at the same time, I mean, I guess, I think it came down to the fact that he didn't tell her right sooner. Like he didn't trust her. We don't get too much timeline in this show. Like, I don't know how much time really surpasses in this show. So I don't know how long they were together. You know, maybe they were together for like a year and he didn't tell her or something like that. I'm not too sure. So, you know, I see, you know, I get why she was upset, but yeah, I mean, as a character, I think, you know, she was okay. I don't think there was anything too special about her.
Yeah.
But I do love Zazie Beetz though. And every time Amber was on the screen, it was just like, was Zazie Beetz. It was weird. Like I just kept picturing her in Atlanta, like that character. It's kind of a similar character. So
yeah, they going back to your thing about Spider-Man, they do the whole Spider-Man thing of like him balancing his superhero life and his like real life. You know, so he has like trouble at school, he's trouble with his grades, trouble with girls. I really like that. And you know, for a show being so violent, the violence really shows you how high the stakes are and with like how intense the show can be. Something as simple as like a love triangle or like or teenage love, and even though it can get pretty frustrating, I gotta admit it was a nice break from some of like the really intense moments of the show.
Yeah, and I mean, in the end, he is a teenager. Like he's in high school. This is something I feel like sometimes I think the Marvel Universe Spider-Mans did this really well, where they really like they show you he is a kid. Like, he's a
Yeah,
kid in high school, like trying to deal with fighting villains and then also being a kid. And I think sometimes the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, like the original ones with Tobey Maguire, didn't really feel that way. Didn't really do that. And I think this show did, which was interesting, right? Like you said, it's this super pretty dark, very very violent show, but it's featuring a kid in high school, so it's dealing with these like otherworldly problems, where there's just blood and gore, and then at the same time he's like trying to get back to his girlfriend in high
yeah,
school. You know what I mean? So I thought they did that really well. I think
yeah,
that's a balancing act that a show has to hit, and I think they hit it pretty well. So I was
yeah,
impressed by that.
yeah. And yeah, and the show does a really good job of like like Mark like some of those things Mark just doesn't really care about them anymore, like grades and like college. And you're like, yeah, of course, like you got much bigger problems, an asteroid's coming, that's your problem. So um
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. uh so then let's talk about other characters that we really liked in the show. Did you have any other favorites?
Yeah, I thought the twins, or the clones were really good. I'm forgetting their names. Was it Mercer?
Yeah, I know they're like the Mauler twins.
Mauler twins. You're right. Yeah, the Mauler clones. I thought they were really good. I thought they were funny, and it's kind of cool how their story came around to add like a pretty important part in the overall plot with robot story. I thought that was pretty cool. So those, they were probably one of my favorites. Um, I mean, I thought,
Darkblood,
what's that?
Damien Darkblood.
Yep. Yeah, he was super cool. I wish he was in it a little more. Like I thought, maybe he would come in at the end or something like that and have a bigger role in the end, but he kind of just and maybe he will, in the next couple seasons. I'm sure he's not gone completely. But yeah, that was a super cool concept with like a demon, a
Yeah,
demon investigator. I thought that was cool. And then Omni Man was just like as messed up of a character he was just such a good character.
yeah,
I think the concept of an Omni Man is terrifying, right? Because it's literally just Superman, like you said, but no boundaries. Like he's just Superman, but a bad person, really. And he just does not care about human life, as we saw in the last episode.
yeah,
And I kept thinking a lot about Homelander. Like it's very, very similar to Homelander, but I think it's even Omni Man scarier because Homelander, is still controlled by people. Like Homelander's weakness in the in Homelander from the boys, the show The Boys, which is also an Amazon Prime show, which I also highly recommend if people haven't watched it. But Homelander's weakness is, he cares about his image. Like he wants to be, like the American patriot. Like he wants people to see him as, an amazing superhero who just does no wrong. Whereas Omni Man doesn't care, as we saw. Like, he just kills masses of people.
massive.
Um, yeah. So I think like, it's just a terrifying concept. I kept thinking about that. Like, what if this, what if this actually happened? Like there's nothing we could do about it.
Yeah,
So I thought, yeah, I mean, he was probably one of my favorites too. What about
yeah.
you?
No, I totally agree. Omni Man is definitely my favorite. It's like you said, it's very similar to Homelander, but like Homelander's a little bit more innocent in that way. Like he just cares so much about looking good, whereas this Superman has his own specific agenda, and it's to pretty much conquer the earth.
Yep.
And he's trying to conquer the world, and just being so motivated by like such an ulterior motive, I think is just gives them so much more depth. There was one of my favorite parts, I think, in the first couple of episodes is when the city is attacked by the invading group of Flaxans, those aliens,
Mhm.
and then Omni Man's still recovering and he comes back, and then instead of just chasing them away, he goes to their planet and then completely destroys their planet. And I was like, that was like, Superman would never do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the DC Superman, he's just too good. But then you have somebody like Omni Man who's just going to go to the source of the threat and then just take out the entire civilization. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
like that choice alone. And then it looks like he was there for a while. He was there long enough to grow a beard. So you're like, how long was he there messing, just absolutely destroying their civilization for? And then he comes back and asks for a shower.
Yeah.
Other characters that I liked, I really liked Mark as the main character. Like I think Steven Yeun does an absolutely amazing job. Just portraying a lot of emotions, and I can see his talent as an actor through his voice acting, which is great. And it really shows you. I think this show is a good case of like how important voice acting can be for an animated show. Just because having these like Oscar nominees, being in a voice acting role, totally elevated the entire show overall, I think. But also, I really dug that he's called Invincible. The show is called Invincible, and like the only thing invincible about him is his spirit, and everything else is very, very invincible. The dude is just constantly getting wrecked and destroyed.
He did.
And beaten to an inch of
I mean,
his
he's still pretty powerful. Like he takes a beating.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, he gets his ass kicked plenty of times in this show.
So many times.
By different people, including his dad. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. And then ultimately by his own dad, so
yeah.
But then I really, that last episode, we can just start talking about that last episode here in a bit, but I just he whines about being a superhero and complains and like says he doesn't want to be a superhero anymore, but then when the chips are down, he's willing to sacrifice everything. And that kind of character always, that's it's a very endearing character, the one who's like just struggling to do the right thing. Another character that I really liked, two more that I'll mention, three more I guess, is Debbie, his mom. Fantastic character.
I agree.
Absolutely amazing. That maybe the strongest character on the show, just through pure spirit. Cecil, I really liked how Cecil had, he was very similar to Omni Man in the sense where he's like willing to do whatever it took for humanity. But then whereas Omni Man, both are just willing to do whatever it takes. But he just doesn't have the physical power that Omni Man does. And then Titan. I love that Titan story arc where Mark was going to help Titan and him and his family, and his daughter was sick, and then he rises to the top of the food chain. All great characters for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And you brought up, a couple of the what I saw as short stories in the show, and I really liked how they did this, where they had an episode where it was kind of a story in and of itself, but it in the end tied into the main story, the main plot, which I thought was really cool. So you mentioned the alien invasion. I think that was in like maybe the second episode, and in the end, it shows Omni Man. It's just kind of another way of showing how like powerful Omni Man is, and how he's not a good superhero. Like, he's not a good person because he just destroys an entire civilization.
Yeah.
You brought up Titan. I thought that was one of my favorite episodes. Again, it was kind of like a Titan was, kind of the guy on the street, right? Trying to, make a difference, and it came back on his family. And, but in the end, he, obviously he enlists Mark's help throughout the episode, but in the end, the new Guardians of the Globe shows up and they all get their ass kicked, including Mark.
By one dude.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so that was also probably one of my favorite characters. I don't know his name, but the lion dude was insane.
And
I thought maybe in the last episode, he was going to somehow show up again, because he seemed like he's the only character who may be able to go toe to toe with Omni Man. Like,
I was dying to see them fight. I was dying to see them fight.
I was blown away. I mean, that was probably one of my favorite episodes, but he just went off. Yeah. And it was insane. And then he just leaves like, this is not worth my time. Like, who are these people? Yeah. I thought that was crazy. So they'll probably bring him back. I think in the end they showed, when they did the montage of all like the villains and stuff, I think they showed him at one point. So I'm assuming he'll be back. Yeah. But yeah, that was really cool. And then, and then Robot Story too. What'd you think of Robot Story?
I loved Robot is definitely one of my favorite characters as well. I thought, I loved the story. I just thought his motive was so weird, but just really quick, snippet, going back to the lion dude that totally murked everybody. My favorite thing about it was that when he was introduced, he was just introduced as like one of the villains. So you had no idea how strong he was until they started fighting. And then he's like the last one standing, and you're like, oh, they got this. And then he just wipes them all out.
Crazy.
Crazy. But yeah, going back to Robot. Yeah, so Robot, Cecil, Omni Man all seem to have that same characteristic where they're willing to do whatever it takes, right? And I liked the twist where he was a human. And if you really think about it, of course, it has to come from somewhere. And then that whole story arc, I thought was, to be honest with you, fantastic. And he makes a very dark choice. He decides to die, as himself, so that he can be reborn again.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he won't be able to live this life, he's willing to make that sacrifice. And I thought that was a really, really profound choice that he made. And that conversation between him and himself as Rex was, it was pretty sad. And then he says what, something like "live the life that we could never live" or something like that. And that hit me right here, homie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought, and then his love with Monster Girl, I think, even though it is weird, it's a very interesting moral dilemma that he finds himself in, because they're both like 30-year-old people in the bodies of a
14-year-old, right?
Yeah, 14, 15-year-old kid, right? So it just makes for a really complicated moral situation there.
I did think it was funny though that he was a kid version of Rex. I thought that was really good.
That was the weirdest part for me. I was like, why?
It was because she like showed interest. At least he thought she showed interest in Rex. So I thought it worked, but I don't know. I think the main reason they went with that was just the comedic effect. Like I thought it was funny because then Rex was freaking out about it. So I like that.
Pick the right voice actor for Rex.
Oh my God. Yeah. I can't not envision him as Rafi.
I can't stop seeing him.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. What about Eve? We haven't really talked about Eve because she was, she kind of became one of the more main characters. What'd you think of her? I will say my overall impression is she's pretty OP. Like I don't even understand her power. I guess she can just make anything. Like she can just like alter matter and pretty much make anything, which is interesting.
She's a god.
Essentially. God. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was gonna. So yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts on her?
I don't see how she doesn't get more respect. I'll be honest. She's an absolute god. Like she goes around growing crops for farmers by the leagues, and she can literally solve world hunger by herself.
Yeah.
So she can. Yeah. So
she was like Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
Basically, what her powers were.
Like she seems to have limitless power. But I think I'm interested to see where that character goes. Right now, she's like, she's more caught up in like doing in like this like soul searching thing, rather than really applying herself to whatever the world problem is, right?
Eat, pray, love tour. Yeah.
But I think she makes for a more interesting love interest for Mark than Amber did.
I disagree with that because she's like another superhero, so it would be easier for them to be together, in my opinion. I mean, I think the whole, having a human partner makes it harder for Mark to, I don't know, to deal with both, his normal life and then his superhero life. But we'll see. I'm not sure what they're going to do with that.
It just seems like, you take a look at like him and Amber's situation, and whenever he's needed to talk to somebody, instead of talking to Amber because he can't before, he would have gone and talked to Eve instead, right? And even before, I think, there was like moments of interest between the two before he finally started dating Amber. And I just, we'll see. Like I said before, I'm not too big of a fan of Amber as the character. It really, really rubbed me the wrong way for her when they were on the school campus. and he turned into Invincible, essentially got his butt kicked around, but then saved everybody's life, and then came back as Mark, and she was furious with him for disappearing. And then it turned out that she knew exactly who he was. So I was like, so what were you so mad about? Like what? Because you guys have been dating for what I thought is like maybe like 2-3 months, and he didn't tell you his biggest secret. And I was like, so for me, that's a very frustrating part as a character for her. So yeah, I just I'm kind of hoping that Mark gets with Eve. So
Yeah, I mean, she was a better friend than William. So that's fair.
Williams, I had two characters down that I did not like, and it was Amber and William. William was also bad. William should have said something.
But yeah, I think the show, I think a really strong part of the show is that the human characters were strong characters as well as, the superhero characters. And I think that worked pretty well. I mean, I still think, even if you didn't like Amber, I still thought she was a pretty strong character. She kind of held her own. So as you said, Mark's mom, Debbie, I think was a really strong character.
Amazing.
Yeah. And Cecil, obviously. So I think, I think they did a good job with that.
Also, did you catch that Mark is half Korean?
I don't know if I did catch that.
Yeah, so really subtle, but in the portraits that he has hanging up on his wall, they're written in Korean. And then Stephen Yoon and Sandra Oh are both Korean as well. So
that's cool.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that he is half Korean.
Oh, okay. That's really cool. I did not notice that.
Yeah, represent.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. So I think we praise the show a lot.
Yeah.
What are some cons you have or things you wish they would have done a little differently?
Well, first, I hate that title sequence. It's so abrupt, and it's just
with the blood that like keeps adding on to the.
No, it's like Mark's gonna have to be, and then the title just comes out of nowhere, and then it's like Invincible. And
I actually liked that. I thought that was cool.
Idea, but I just think like the first couple of times I'm like seeing them, it's like, all right, like it didn't work for me. Gotcha. I will also say that overall I think the animation was really good, but there were just a few times where it looked really janky, or the CGI. Like I think in that last sequence during the final episode, there was a part where there was just too much CGI. But overall, I think the animation was more of a strength. But there were a few times where it did look a little janky. Amber, I think, is just a very inconsistently written character. And then other than that, I don't really have a lot of cons.
Yeah, I don't either. I agree. I think, yeah, I kind of agree on Amber as well. I think a couple of the characters were, weak, but there were a lot of characters in the show, so I didn't expect them all to be, great. Again, I think I don't have too many cons either. I think one of the only ones I have is just that last episode. I wanted a little more resolution.
Really?
I know people are going to think that's crazy because all I've heard is praise for that last episode because it began insane. I mean, it was crazy.
We should talk about that. We should talk about the last.
Yeah. But, I don't know. I guess I want a little more resolution. I understand, how they ended it and why they ended it that way. So that's fine. It's just kind of a, personal thing for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah. And then I think my only other con was that I wanted it took so Omni Man kills Guardians of the Globe in the very first episode, and then it takes all the way until the end to get any hint or any idea of why he did it. I did kind of want some more. It felt kind of like WandaVision, where it took like 4 episodes to even find out what was happening, right? Mm-hmm. It kind of felt that way to me. Obviously it's a different story, but I wanted a little more of hints to why he did it. Right. And then, it was kind of a big reveal at the end of just, their race, the Vultramites are basically just trying to conquer the universe, and like anyone who's weak, they're just going to kill basically, which I thought, worked for why he did it. I don't know. I just kind of wish we got a little more.
I wish we could have seen that, the war of the Viltrumites.
Yeah. Well, they showed the training, and that was insane. I was like,
Just
my
a
God.
planet full of supermen
Yeah.
fighting each other to the death, and 50% get wiped out. Dude,
Yeah.
that's nuts. Yeah. Let's talk about that last episode here.
Okay.
So I most of my notes that I took for in the spoiler section goes from the last episode. But when I said before that, when the chips are down, Mark is willing to sacrifice everything, right? And I think this episode is pretty much the overall manifestation of his decision to become a superhero overall, right? And it was before all he would do, he was literally complaining to Eve that he was done being a superhero. And then the whole thing with Omni Man happens, and that's when he really makes his decision, right? Um and this episode was absolute insanity because he goes his Omni Man essentially forces him to make a decision, either join him or fight against him, right? And this is where Stephen Yeun's voice acting was so important here. When he essentially tells Omni Man to bugger off, and that this is his people and that he's going to defend them, right? And that moment where he tells Omni Man that this is his people, I thought was just such a powerful moment, and the voice acting was so good by Stephen Yeun. And then Omni Man literally just proceeds to torture the guy and just puts him through all this psychological trauma. And that is where I thought the violence was just an essential part of the show, because when he's holding his own son through that train and it's just slaughtering people in that train, dude.
That was insane. I've never seen anything like that.
Insane. I had no words. My jaw was dropped and I was like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
And it just, so many parts about that, right? Where he punches him all the way for leagues into downtown Chicago, and the building starts falling and Mark is trying to save them, right? And he catches the woman, and then the whole building falls apart, and he's literally just holding her arm, right? He saves that pilot and is like talking to him and like trying to calm him down. And the guy's thanking him, and Omni Man comes and just crushes his skull in front of his face.
That was insane too.
Right. But through all of that, right, the kid is never broken. Like his spirit is never broken, right? And I think, and this is where like his name of Invincible really comes to shine, I think. And even though the guy gets absolutely pulverized, even in the end, and that part where he's like, what'll you have in 500 years? And Mark's like, I'll still have you, Dad. And I was like,
yeah. That's what got him too. It seems like
that's what got him. But yeah, well, what are your thoughts about the last episode?
I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think the violence definitely played a huge part in this last episode, especially just to show how brutal Omni Man is, and just his complete disdain for humanity, right? And his son too. Right. I think that worked really well. And yeah, I mean, it was just crazy. I didn't know what to expect the last episode. I did not expect the first like 15 minutes to just be Mark getting destroyed by his dad and a bunch of people dying in the process. Did not expect that. So that kind of, and that was pretty crazy. I did think, I thought it was good how they kind of ended it with, Mark kind of making some amends with like his friends, things like that, and kind of going back to normal life and like trying to figure out how am I going to live my life. And I did think the end was pretty funny when they did the montage of like all the villains that we saw throughout the show. Right. And he's talking to the alien dude, wherever the Seth Rogen character is. Yeah. on the moon. And he's like, so what are you going to do next? And they're like showing all this montage, and Mark's just like, I think finish high school, I guess. He's like, cool. What's high school? And I was like, all right, that was pretty good. I liked how they ended that. That was pretty funny. I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think it's a cool point you make, where Invincible is really like his spirit and his will, not necessarily him. Because as you said before, we saw him get, beaten to hell in a couple episodes throughout the season. So I think you're right. It kind of goes back to that, even when you're like crazy super powered, right? It still takes like your will, to really I don't know, to shape up to be the person you want to be. So I think, they kind of had that message, which was good.
Yeah, that last episode kind of felt like what Man of Steel accidentally did, and it was like the collateral of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
superheroes, but man, the only thing I would say about that was I wish they showed us how the media viewed Omni Man a little bit more, just to show us that juxtaposition of what he's really like, as opposed to like how the world views him, because we knew the world viewed him as like this, like like a Superman pretty much, but we had already known that he was not really all he was cracked up to be, especially after episode 1. So just maybe like showing us how like goody two shoes he portrays himself to be to the world and to the media, and then juxtapose that with all the violence that he's capable of, when he doesn't really care. But yeah, dude, some of that was so sad. There's like little, just tiny moments, and there's one part where after the train, there's just a dad reaching for his already dead daughter, underneath the rubble. And Omni Man just casually comes down and just steps on the rock that's right on top of him and crushes him. And, like little moments like that just really goes to show, the true lack of decency, or like the lack of value of human life that Omni Man really like always had.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. A few lines that I really liked that during that fight. I also really liked that it was like a true ideological clash between the two, and not just like just two brawlers going at it without really any kind of conversation. There was just constant conversation between the two, and he was just constantly talking about what it means to be a Viltrumite. And some two lines that I jotted down was that really made an impact for me, was when he holds Mark and then he says, "It's right to pity them as a people, but wrong to value them over your own kind." And then another one where he says, "Look what they have to do in order to mimic a fraction of our power." And both I had to totally agree with, and I thought were really well written lines. But then, but Mark responds in the exact way that you would totally expect and you can totally understand, right? Where he would never, I think Mark responds with something along the lines of like join a bunch of aliens that he's never met. And before he proclaims that, these are his people. So I love the ideological side of this father-son battle. And I love that it wasn't just like two superpowered beings just pretty much like duking it out.
Yep.
And that there was like a lot of depth behind that fight.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So any other points that you have on your side?
No, I think I've said everything I wanted to say about this. It's an epic show. I'm glad I watched it. It's super popular. Like all my friends have watched it at this point. I think if you haven't watched it, go watch it. I hope if you made it to this point in the podcast, you have watched it, because we just spoiled the whole show for you. But still watch it because it's amazing and you'll enjoy it. I will ask, what do you think? And this kind of general question, what do you think about these weekly drops that they're doing? With, I know Marvel's doing it on Disney Plus with their shows. Amazon did it with Invincible. Are you liking it, or do you wish they just dropped it all at once?
Nah, I'm into it.
I'm into it too.
Yeah, I'm very into it. I like waiting for the Fridays. Every Friday, I was like, all right, new episode of Invincible.
I know. Yeah. It's like it gives me another thing to look forward to on Friday. And I like how it's dropped on Friday and then I have the weekend to watch it instead of like HBO, it airs at 9 on Sunday night. And you're like, like tomorrow's work, I'm going to watch this and then I have to go to bed and work, like Game of Thrones would end and I would be depressed because I work the next day. But this is like, it's like I finished work on Friday and I watched the show and,
right.
It's
even
great.
If you don't, even if you don't watch it on Friday, if you're too busy, you got the whole thing streaming on Saturday, right? So I really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they probably will keep doing it. And I also think it's cool because it kind of gives people opportunity for discussions, right? Like week by week. I like to listen to some Marvel podcasts. So I like listening to, like, week by week, like their review on the show, like that episode and what's coming next, and doing the theorizing and that kind of stuff. I enjoy that. So I think it's cool that they're doing it week by week.
I think it works a lot better than releasing the whole show. Also, yeah, it gives them a little bit more time to work on because they can stretch it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you release the whole thing, like we would, like people would binge it in one night, right? And now we had what, almost 2 months of pure entertainment. Amazing. I'll do
Yeah.
it all over again. Yeah.
Yep. All right, man. Any final thoughts?
No, I have pretty much exhausted what I wanted to cover. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, you absolutely need to. I would say, this show, like you said before, incredibly unique, and they take a very exhausted genre in, like, in the superhero genre, and they somehow made it so fresh and so original and so unique. So big fan. Definitely excited for season 2.
Yeah, same. I'm super excited.
Yeah.
Are you gonna read the comics?
Maybe, but I
I've
kind of
thought
went
about it.
into it blind. So
Okay.
uh,
I like that. Yeah, and I don't know how, like, if they follow the comics exactly. Like, I'm not sure how close they are. I imagine it
from
probably follows it pretty closely, but
yeah, so actually from what I've read, the show is better than the comics supposedly. Like the since the creator of the comics is pretty much working on the show, he's taken this opportunity to improve upon a lot of things from the comics. Like Mark in the comics is just white, but here in the show he's half Korean. And then I think Amber is also white, but he uh, makes her black in this show. So well, not that those are the only improvements, also story beats and everything, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I got you. Cool, man. All right. Well, I think that that wraps it up for Invincible.
Cool.
If you like this episode, make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more content. And please feel free to comment below about other movies and TV shows that you'd like to hear us non-critics criticize, or you'd like to, review some things that you guys want to hear. And I think next we'll probably review the Falcon and Winter Soldier, the Disney Plus Marvel Cinematic Universe show that just ended, I think last week, 2 weeks ago. So maybe we'll try to get an episode about that out next week. Maybe definitely in the next 2 weeks we'll make that happen. So yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, if you and again, if you want to show your family and friends this amazing new podcast you discovered, we definitely encourage you guys to share the link to this video and our channel. And we greatly appreciate the support as we begin this podcasting adventure. So I think that wraps it up.
All right.
All right, Brian, I'll talk to you later.
All right. See you guys.
See ya. Bye.